Hello and welcome to Access Chat. I'm delighted that we're welcoming Robert Scoble to the chat today. Robert is a technology evangelist and journalist and has been talking about the benefits and perils of new technology, mainly the benefits and the amazing things that we're going to see in the future for as long as I can remember being engaged in tech. First met Robert over a decade ago on a tech tour where we were having discussions about privacy and the implications of privacy in tech and sharing and the fairly new then social media phenomenon that we've been riding ever since. Quite a lot has happened in the intervening years, but it finally managed to persuade you to come on the show. So thank you very much, Robert. Can you
Thank you.
Elaborate a bit more, because you've been doing some exciting stuff, I know.
Oh yeah, well, since the world of I think I met you when I worked at Microsoft in 2003 through 6, and Microsoft had a big R&D lab or still does in Cambridge, and I came and visited. Man, yeah, so much has happened. I mean, we now have decent video conferencing, right? And so we can do the Zoom call. Back then, YouTube was just getting started with crappy little small videos, on a web page, right? I mean, so much has happened in 15 years. I'm a futurist, technologist, journalist. I had the first ride in the first Tesla with Elon Musk. That was, shortly after I met with you guys. Siri was launched in my son's bedroom. I was early to see Instagram and Flipboard and Cloudera and many enterprise and consumer companies. And I've been around the world giving speeches about technology in Silicon Valley and all that. And I've written 4 books. So the last book that I wrote was about spatial computing and about virtual and augmented reality and robots and autonomous cars and virtual beings that can also move around in 3D space. We're about to go through a paradigm shift of computing where we don't just hold a computer a flat screen anymore, or touch, or use a flat screen. Like in my Tesla, I have a computer that's a flat screen, right? Soon I'm going to be using glasses to see computing on everything, and we're going to be able to move through that space and touch things and interact with things in a much different way than we can on a phone or on an iPad or on a laptop or on a desktop machine. So we're about to go through a real interesting paradigm shift, and that's what I wrote about with Irina Cronin. So.
Yeah, and I know that there are rumors about various different smart glasses coming out that are going to be potentially transformative in the way that we view wearable computing, because the first experience of wearable computing was really Google Glass a few years ago. It didn't get that sort of social acceptance that maybe was hoped for, but actually in the accessibility community we were quite keen to see that acceptance, because we see the potential of augmented reality for helping people with disabilities, and actually some of the users amongst our sort of audience are probably still the people that are using these kind of tools right now.
And those are those were almost 5 years ago now, right? It's amazing how long it takes to get these computers going. But you look at a pair of AirPods, right? AirPods have more compute inside them than an iPhone 4 did, right? Just a few years ago. So you can see the computing world, thanks to Moore's law, is shrinking down and making more capable products for a cheaper price, right? And that's about to hit. The Google Glass, in a way, it failed because it was so early and it just didn't do all that much, for consumers, right? The camera wasn't as good as a GoPro camera. The microphones weren't that good. It didn't have a good Siri or a good AI to talk to and understand you. It didn't do real augmented reality where it's going to lay, things on top of the physical world. And that's all about to change, right? Um, we're seeing pieces of it in R&D labs, but we're starting to see real glasses that can do real augmented reality, not like that, with lidars that are highly detailed, and with AI that really is starting to understand this at this point and has huge efforts behind it. I mean, Amazon alone has 10,000 people working on Alexa, right? That's a huge effort, and you're starting to see those efforts pay off in a lot of different ways.
Or sometimes we observe a certain narrative from companies when they talk about VR. Google had one about Google Glass.
Yeah.
Do you feel that is the right narrative to reach the audiences and to reach, everyone, someone that barely knows how to use the phone? How can that relate? Is there a gap between what they are saying and what should be said in order to facilitate adoption?
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion about why Google Glass failed, and many people just don't realize what actually went down there. I wore mine for a year, and most people blame the camera, and I know it's not the camera. It was actually, there's a new social contract problem where we evolved over millions of years to look into each other's eyes to see if you're trustworthy or see if you're paying attention to me, and we have a social contract that happens because of that. And here was a new screen in front, in between us, and it confused people. It distracted people, and they didn't know how to explain that. So they blamed the camera because that's the first thing they saw that they could actually talk about. And I have proof of this because I was at Coachella with, and two guys in front of me said, I need to get away from the Google Glass guys. I wasn't actually wearing it. There was two guys behind me who had it on. And I grabbed the two guys in front of me and I said, why does that piss you off? He goes, I don't know. It might be the camera. And I go, come on, there's everybody around you is holding an iPhone with a camera on it recording, right? And it's being professionally recorded on TV. So it's not the camera. What else is there? Why did that make you nervous? Why did you want to get away from that? And it was this social contract problem where one guy said, it just makes me feel uneasy because he might be a cop with information in his eye, and I don't have the same I don't know what he's seeing. I don't know what he's looking at. I don't know if he's doing face recognition on me. You go into all these dystopian fears, right? And part of it's media control, but part of it's just how we evolved over millions of years to look into each other's eyes. So that leads into a whole narrative problem, right? And I think when Apple comes out with its glasses, they're going to come out with a much different narrative. They're not going to jump people out of a. When I was in the front row when Google announced Google Glass, and they jumped performers out of a blimp and had them skydive down and then do some tricks on bicycles, and all while wearing the glasses and live streaming it, which set this whole expectation around the camera that just wasn't true. My Google Glass, if I tried to run the camera, would only last half an hour, right? The battery wasn't that good, and the quality wasn't very good. Putting a GoPro on the side of my head was way better in terms of video quality than the little camera in this little glass was. So the narrative was bad from the start, and they shouldn't have come out that way. They should have come out with, hey, this is a new kind of product for a very specific thing. It's very expensive. It doesn't do a whole lot. But the things it did were pretty damn amazing. I mean, like you said, if you're somebody who can't see very well, and you have a little camera that's helping you live your life or listening to you or telling you directions, that's a huge improvement in your life, right? And we're about to see that kind of stuff really big, because like Apple is coming out in a couple months or next month in the new iPhone with a new LiDAR on the back, right? So now you start thinking about all the developers who are going to build things to build a complete 3D model of your house, right, in your phone. And the AI now is getting so good, and you know this from computer vision work that's being done in cars. Like, I'm sitting in my Tesla, right? And my Tesla can see an orange cone on the freeway at 200 meters away, right? Well, that technology is coming to the phone. So now it can tell you where your Cheerios are, or where your keys are in your house, or all sorts of different things, right? Where's your pills? Where's your glasses? So now you can start building something for somebody who's blind, right, to really understand their house in 3D and where things are, right? And so when Apple comes out with its glasses in a year or 2 or 3, the LiDAR is going to be the same that's coming out on the phone, and the AI is going to be next level, right? And it's going to tell you all sorts of stuff about the world. And it's going to have a really good voice recognition system, because Siri is fairly capable. It's not perfect yet, for sure, but it's getting a lot better, and it will be a lot better in the glasses, because there's going to be a microphone right next to your mouth, and it's going to know what you're looking at, which is real key, because there's going to be a laser looking at your eye, knowing where you're looking in the world, and it's going to have that LiDAR, which is 300,000 points of data that can be directed around to know what you're looking at. So if you look at a product and ask it how many calories, or can I buy 10 of these on Amazon, it'll go, oh yeah, that's a hint bottle, and it'll look up on Amazon and find you an answer and give you an answer right in front of you, right?
Wow, that's amazing. I have a question that I was talking to someone at Google, and I brought up the Google Smart Glasses, because it really was helpful for the community of people with disabilities and people like me that are over a certain age. We want to age in place and be independent. And as I'm older, even though I actually have 20/20 vision, I no longer can see very well at all because of my age, partially my age. And dry eye syndrome, blah, blah, blah. But I'm curious from your perspective. So I was talking about Google Glasses in an article that I was doing, and one of my friends at Google came back and said, "Debra, don't play Google. It's our biggest failure. We're very embarrassed by it, and it's just something we don't want to talk about." And I thought, I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. Now, this was just one Google employee's perspective, but I think that, as you said, that's such an interesting point that you made of sort of the social contract we have, because I know my husband always struggled, and my daughter did too, interestingly enough, with Down syndrome, but they were both bad. My husband had a real bad traumatic brain injury as a child, but they both were really bad about looking people in the eyes. And I would always say, you got to look people in the eyes so they know they're looking at you, not taking into account vision impairment and all that. But so it seems like society learned a lot from Google Glasses.
Yeah, I have an autistic son, and he can't look in people's eyes. Right, that's a marker of autism.
He's not listening. Right, he doesn't. It doesn't mean he's not listening. And so, of course, we are redoing social contracts right now. I meet people. I had some plumbing work done, and 7 men came into my house, and okay, I know I'm not supposed to shake their hands. I know I'm supposed to, but the normal social contracts aren't there. So I just wonder, though, if we should all, instead of, people thinking the Google Glass is a failure, wasn't that something that we needed to walk so we could learn this stuff? It seems like it's just a natural part of what we have to do, is we're learning to use these technologies.
I totally agree with you, and I'm sad that they still view it as a failure, because it really did try to introduce us to this new paradigm of wearing a computer on your face, right? And that is it's a rough thing to convince people to wear something new on their face. People are very particular about what they put on their face, right? They have to look at it a long time. And this is sort of why I think Apple has to do it, right? Google doesn't have that kind of social empathy with people. It just doesn't, you know. They don't launch good products. You look at Google's history over the last 15 years. How many products have they launched that have caught? You know, they've failed over and over on Google Buzz and Google Reader and Google, and Google Plus social stuff, right? And social stuff is hard to do for Google. They're not a very empathetic company. They're an advertising company, right? And the search and the utilitarian company. And that they will have their day in glasses because the AI that Google has the best AI in the business, right? When I talk to Alexa, it's stupid. It doesn't understand me very well, right? When I talk to Google Assistant, it understands me almost always. And it almost always gives me a better answer than Siri or Alexa or like Tesla has one of these voice recognition systems, or Facebook has one in the portal. And so Google will have its day again, and they shouldn't have looked at it as a failure. You know, Silicon Valley tries things over and over again until we figure it out and fix all the problems with it. You know, General Magic came before the cell phone did, right? And you know, we have many examples of that where we tried things over and over again until Moore's law flipped enough times to make a technology possible and interesting to people, right? And
right. And we should celebrate that. That's part of us moving forward. It shouldn't be seen as failure. But the
time is coming again. The time is coming again because the computers have now shrunk. In 5 years, they've shrunk quite a bit. Right, we went from 13 nanometer silicon chips to 5 now, right? And that means that the number of transistors on a chip has more than doubled in 5 years, and that means things have gotten smaller and cheaper to make, and more capable. And while that's happened, all the infrastructure's gotten better. I mean, my house has fiber line in it now. Right, I didn't have fiber line 5 years ago, and I didn't have Wi-Fi 6 in my house. LTE didn't work very reliably. Now it's very reliable in California. I mean, I drove all the way from LA to San Francisco watching a live concert while my Tesla was self-driving. I didn't have a self-driving car 5 years ago, right? You know, and this thing is starting to really self-drive, and it didn't drop the whole way. It didn't used to do that 5 years ago, right? So we now have a different world coming at us, and COVID has also completely changed everybody's belief about technology. All my school teachers are using Zoom now. If you told me January 1st that my school would be on Zoom, I would have been like, what are you talking about? How is that going to happen? Well, now my kids in a half an hour are going to be on Zoom calls having school, right? And so everything has changed this year. And that has led to a plowed field. I mean, Silicon Valley is a former farm, right? So we plowed the field and gotten it ready for this next paradigm of moving toward computers on not just our face, because we're wearing them on our wrist. Apple next week is going to announce a new watch, right, with more sensors. And these new AirPods have really gotten much better, and soon they're going to be spatial as well. So you're going to be able to hear sound from different places with these AirPods. You know, there's a reason they put such high computer in these little headphones to do new kinds of things with them, right? So a lot is going to change in the next two years. Yeah.
So, Robert, as we speak, probably there's a good number of companies that are organizing events, conferences, webinars. This was a boom. After we end up all being confined at home. But everyone is struggling to get attention in those platforms, to have engagement between the speakers and the audience, and sometimes even engagement within the audience itself. How do you see VR and AR addressing this problem? Because this is something that everyone is struggling with.
Yeah. But let's stop and not talk about VR and AR for a second. My wife works at VMware on the conference team. So last year they had 22,000 people at their conference in Las Vegas or San Francisco. San Francisco was last year. And this year they already have 75,000 people signed up, and the conference hasn't even happened yet. It's coming in September, later this month, a couple weeks. And so they're doing it mostly on Zoom and video and having some chats, doing stuff like what we're doing right here, right? Because most people don't have VR yet, right? And they just couldn't figure out how to buy enough headsets for everybody or whatever. It just wasn't ready yet to go to VR. Now, soon we're going to see more improvements in VR. Facebook next week is going to announce a new VR headset, which is going to be lighter, and it's $100 less than it was, and it's has better cameras, better hand tracking, better microphones, better audio, more GPU in it, so it can do better visuality. Right, much better product for less money. Right, $300 instead of $400, and it does more, and it's more comfortable. So that starts giving you a sense of, okay, in 2 years, there's going to be another one, which is going to be like closer to a pair of glasses, right? And when the glasses come, that's when this world really changes. But there has been some conferences that have used VR already. Burning Man is one that just happened this weekend. I think Burning Man's effort in history is going to be a real key weekend to look back on and say, man, that was real important. That changed how everybody looked at events and how to do virtualized things. So VR gives you some real benefits over Zoom calls, right? One, you're immersed in the media. I'm looking at you on a little phone, right? And you're 3 inches by 2 inches. And I barely have an idea of, what it feels like to be in the room with you. That's not very immersive. If I had you in VR and you're an avatar, I can actually touch you like I would in the real life. I can shake your hand or high five you, or I can even pass you virtual things. I can throw a ball at you. I can shoot you, right? And that gives you two things. One, it gives you presence, which means I feel like I'm with you in real world. And it gives you immersion, which means you feel like you're in the world. You're in a game, or you're in a movie set, right? At Burning Man, there was some camps that they had built where the media was on a dome, and it was like being in this exploratorium in San Francisco where everything wraps all the way around you, and it was really beautiful and really immersive. And it was something that you would have to go to a movie theater, like an IMAX theater, to experience that kind of immersion, right? Where you feel like you're in a movie set. And that's just the start, right? Burning Man. So Burning Man, one of the guys who went to Burning Man in 2014, Greg Edwards, when he went, he took scans, 3D scans of a lot of the pieces of art that was on the desert floor. They call it the playa, right? When you go to real Burning Man, it's in a desert in Nevada. There's 60,000 people out there, and it's laid out like a a fan, and you have art pieces all through it, temples and different kinds of things that people have created. And it's big. It would take you maybe an hour to walk all the way from one end to another, right? Well, he took the scans, and he even hired a helicopter to take pictures overhead. Now you can do it with a drone. but he took all of those into virtual reality. So he recreated a 3D representation of Burning Man in VR. So when you're in your VR headset, you can actually walk around his 3D scans of everything, and they're laid out like in real Burning Man. It takes you an hour to walk across it, right? Move across it with your little controllers. And then they invited all of the artists that went to real Burning Man, because they couldn't hold Burning Man this year, right? They canceled it, and they said, we're doing it virtually. We're doing a metaverse. And they invited them into Microsoft's program called AltSpace VR, which is where Greg put all this art into. And each one of them built little camps. Like one guy built one that looked like you were inside a snow cave, right? Another guy built a whole maze in a rock formation. And it was a lot of fun to go through that with other people. You go through it with 20 or 30 other people, and you try to figure out which way to go to get to the end. If you went the wrong way, you would fall through some quicksand, right? Virtual quicksand, and you would respawn to the beginning. It was a lot of fun. And there was other camps that had beautiful temples built, and you went in the temple and you heard a concert or a speech. Like I heard Baratunde give a speech at one of these temples. And it was really amazing. And you could be there with other people. It felt like you were walking next to somebody else, right? So you got that kind of presence, which we're all so hungry for right now, right? We can't go to conferences, and we can't go to even restaurants and meet with our friends anymore. So we're really hungry for that kind of presence, and in VR you get it. But to me, it's just the start of something else, right? Every conference in 5 years is going to do a virtual thing like this, and you're going to use your glasses to go to virtual conferences. And virtual conferences are far more inclusive than physical ones, right? I mean, I've talked about this for many years. Even VMware, right? A corporate conference, it costs, I don't know, if you're coming from Africa, it costs $2,000 for the flight, and then you have to stay for a week in San Francisco. That's $450 a night, or it was. And then you have dinners to go to, and and other things, and you want to put a couple of days of vacation on there, right? It turns into $4,000 or $5,000 to go to a conference like that, right? Well, now, and I think this is why the numbers, and it's not, VMware is not the only one to notice this. Microsoft with its Build conference and Amazon with its conferences all had bigger numbers and had more gender diversity and more racial diversity and more more people from more places, more diversity in terms of places, because now all of a sudden a poor kid in Mumbai could go to a conference because there wasn't much cost involved in it, right? And
so
that
super
really opened it up to a lot of people. Yeah.
So there's a few things I'd like to sort of unpack. So if we think back to the benefits of inclusivity through these sort of virtual environments, the disability community really adopted and invested in early versions of this through Second Life. There was a big disability community in Second Life. I think again we're going to have a big disability community in virtual worlds, because you can do more stuff on the other side of things. With avatars at the moment, I have problems with them. So Antonio turned up to at the Teams call recently and put his avatar on, and after about 10 minutes, my brain just melted down, because what happened was I wasn't able to read the social signals, or I was misinterpreting the social signals that the avatar was trying to convey, because it wasn't quite accurate. So I wasn't sure whether he was bored with me, pissed off, or just mocking me. It's like, please just turn it off. I can't. I can't actually cope. So there's still, I think, some way for us to go before we can be comfortable in this world. But I absolutely see the potential.
And avatars, we call this crossing the chasm, but there's a term I'm forgetting now. Where your human mind, as digital things get closer to being real, or real representations of them, your mind starts noticing the flaws in that, right? And this is certainly true with avatars, and this is one reason why most avatars are. So the avatars today are cartoony. Mm-hmm. And there's not a 3D sensor on your face to know where you're actually looking. So that they have a little AI that actually predicts where you're looking and makes your eyes look like you're looking at somebody or not looking at somebody, right? And it's listening to the microphone and making the mouth move, and it's not real, right? And you're noticing all the problems with that. When we get glasses and the next versions of VR, there's going to be better eye sensors that are going to watch where you're looking and going to be able to feed that back to the avatars. So the avatars are going to get better about actually looking at where the human is looking at. And we're getting face recognition, face sensors that are now looking at our faces. If you get that, you get a whole bunch of cool stuff. And you're starting to see improvements in avatars. There's many companies working on that. It's just a matter of years before we get good enough to actually feel like you're with another human and not notice all the flaws with them. But for a while, there's going to be this gap. Yeah,
so we're in that uncanny valley.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, so, uncanny valley where it just isn't good enough, and it's cartoony. And as we try to get from cartoony land to real land, you're going to notice more and more of the flaws on these things.
I think there's also the issue of latency, because latency plays a big part in this as well.
It's less latent. The reason alt space VR is still pretty cartoony of a look, and I'm playing with the new Facebook Horizon that's in beta test right now, and everything's cartoony. They do that because the VR headsets that they're aiming at are the Oculus Quest, which has a small little mobile GPU in the headset itself. The GPU is what draws the polygons in the world, right? Mm-hmm. The game processing unit or graphic processing unit. And if you have a big gaming PC with an NVIDIA card in it, you have a big GPU, right? It can draw 5 times more polygons than the little one in the Quest does. But because we want to be inclusive and not exclusive, right? We don't build things just for the rich people who have the NVIDIA card with a tether to the NVIDIA card. We are building for the lighter weight, all-in-one headsets. And so we're keeping the polygon count down in these virtual worlds. And if I started making your avatar really sharp with a lot of polygons, and latency comes into this, because if I have to draw a lot of polygons in the GPU, everything slows down. So now your world gets laggy, right? And you start noticing jitters, or you notice that things don't work right. That's a real problem. So it all fits together. We're in the early days of this right now, right? And we're just we really need Moore's Law to flip 3 or 4 more times, which is 6 years from now, before we can do really great stuff, right? But we're doing pretty good stuff with this little tiny GPU, and it's pretty amazing, right?
Oh no, I'm certainly really excited about the potential. You talked about the cost of going to conferences and stuff like this. There's been a paradigm shift in how we work, which for a lot of people with disabilities, again, we've been working from home for a long time and saying we need flexible working. Oh no, that's not possible. Clearly it is. The digital transformation has been driven more by COVID-19 than the CIOs and CEOs of the world combined.
Yeah.
What I think has been a struggle has been some of this stuff where we've rolled stuff out really quickly, and it's been inclusive for some. But we're looking at education. You're saying your kids are on Zoom, right? I can imagine the cognitive load for your son who is autistic is going to be really significant, being on Zoom calls all day.
Yeah.
So there's still more that we can learn about some of this stuff, but it doesn't mean that I'm not excited about it. I'm very excited about it, and I'm also excited about the idea that we might actually use the sort of things like augmented reality to actually reduce cognitive overload, because as Debra and I both have ADHD, we are massively distractible, and that takes a toll on you, right? And we're in a world where there's lots of distractions, ever more so. Finding ways to sort of tune that out to enable us to do stuff might actually be really enabling, and at the same time feeding us pertinent information. And that's where you were talking about Google Assistant being really good, because actually it's very good at context-based reminders. So where you're up to. It knows what you're doing. So long as you don't mind giving away your inside leg measurements, it can be really useful and to feed you those kind of pertinent things that you need to do. It's like, oh, you're here now. You need to go and take your pills, or you need to do all of this stuff. So I think it's an exciting period. I mean, before we get to glasses, what do you think are going to be the sort of the new and enabling features in sort of mobile and wearables in the next year or so?
Well,
we're about to go into the release cycle, right?
Yeah, we're just about to get the LiDAR in the new phone. So the new phone on the back will have a 3D sensor that has 300,000 points of data and can see the world in 3D, right? And you can now start seeing developers work that into their applications to do navigation in shopping malls. And I was talking to one company in Iran who's actually building amazing things for stores and navigation around, because they're getting much better 3D data off of these phones. And you're going to see the beginnings of real augmented reality, where you can have a virtual thing in your house on your coffee table, right? And now you can start seeing different kinds of education. I walked around a virus with a bunch of scientists in VR, and because you're in 3D and the virus is blown up as big as a house, you can walk around the chemical structures of the virus and really understand how the thing evolved, and how a drug might attach to it, or how a vaccine might break it apart, or something like that. And you can learn a lot faster that way, right? So, man, it's endless. In my book, we cover 7 industries that are going to see radical change over the next decade, right? From healthcare, we're seeing surgeons use HoloLenses during surgery to get guided to understand where the tumors are and where their cutting tool is, and do that without being able to see inside somebody's body, because you're using very, very small holes to put tools in to cut tumors out of people, right? And so having a 3D representation in a HoloLens of where the cutting tool needs to be is really helpful to the surgeons. To construction workers who are going to use this technology. I talked to one guy at Trimble who is using the Boston Dynamics dog to walk around a construction site, use a LiDAR to make a 3D image of that, and then look for all sorts of things like planning out next day's construction, or looking for problems like is there a bolt missing on a beam that was supposed to be there, right? And they can do all sorts of things with their HoloLenses that are different than a surgeon does, right? And we could talk for hours about this, with about different things that are happening. Yeah,
I can't wait to read the book. So I just went to your site and saw the link. I'm going out there, and I will be leaving a review. Always leave reviews on the books. It helps so much.
It does. We have 4.7 stars on Amazon, and it really does help.
Yes, and 45 reviews already. Already 45 reviews, so he needs more. So I'll make sure that I do it too.
I appreciate it.
Amazing
but
stuff.
For people like my son, this stuff is really going to be transformative. For blind people, it's going to be transformative. For people who are stuck in a wheelchair, like I have friends who can't move, right? They're paralyzed. This is huge because they can now participate, and nobody knows that they're stuck in a wheelchair because they're just yet another avatar standing next to them, right? So now they don't get the social judgments that they might have gotten if they had to go to a real conference, right?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one because quite. So there's a really mixed view of avatars, and I know you've got to jump in a second, Debra, because you've got prior commitments.
I'm so sorry, I did, but I could stay here forever. And I want you to be on my other show, so I'm gonna send you an email. So I'm real quick.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Access Chat, Robert. No, we're already a little bit out of time. It was a very interesting conversation that we look forward to continue on the Twitter chat on Tuesday. So I hope everyone that is listening to us can join us there. And I would like to say thank you to our supporters, Microlink, MyClearTest, and Barclays, who have helped us over the years to make this Twitter chat a reality. Thank you and take care.